Hey there, so today I want to return to the wonderful world of Disney, and I want to talk about Star Wars and Marvel Comics sales. Now it's going to be verified by those pesky stock reports. We have gone over these numbers too before. You know, the closeout for Disney's year, it comes at the end of September. We went over those numbers, and really, if you want to go out and you want to prove something, you go out and you look at the numbers behind the industry. There are snapshots of industry leaders out there because they have to report to stockholders, whether that be the giants, you know, those corporate behemoths like Marvel, whether that be, say, a smaller company like IDW. You see snapshots all over the place that speak to effect of bad practice. Also, if you want to talk about bad practice and what all of this actually leads to, look no further than the retailers that actually stock this stuff. This is talking about the Marvel side of that equation. And really, look at the closings here. You have comic shops. This is within 2019. Talking about closing, you know, after a decade here. Other ones closing up even more. Other ones right at the turn of the year, closing up after 2 decades. Shops after 4+ decades closing their doors. And here was somebody posting about 6 UK shops alone, saying that they're going to be closing their doors after, within the coming year. So, I mean, from looking at, say, December the 25th to right now, yeah, you're already talking about that many closings, and there are lots more. Also, if you go back to 2018 and just do a little bit of precursory research, you'll see that there are a lot of stores. Now, there are a lot more of them out there, too. This is, again, just precursory searching. There's not a lot of work put into that. But if you look at how many stores have closed down, since 2008, we had over 4,000 stores then. Now, a decade later, we're looking at less than half of what was there. Sooner or later, you're going to hit that point of no return where your distribution model, it's not left intact. There will be nothing standing. Stores that were supposed to never close, like a mile high, yeah, they've closed locations. So the things that are being talked about here, it's impact of bad practice. And we talk about bad practice all the time. But let's get into this article and look at exactly what's being discussed here. So they talk about the SEC filings, and they talk about Disney's fiscal year 2018 annual financial report, and they're looking at a specific division within that. The revenue for that division, it went down 4% from 2018 to 2017, and it's down almost 16% when you look from 2018 to 2016. Profits for the 2-year period are also down nearly 17%. Now, Disney, of course, is one of those beasts that they kind of obfuscate these issues pretty well. Why? Because, like they say here, this is the only division to have lost revenue in 2018. If you go back to 2017 and look at it, not so much. They have a lot of problems. They've been making a lot of moves, but also within a lot of moves right now, they may well overextend themselves, and you may not see an impact within, say, the next 3 to 5 years, but you'll definitely see an impact from that. And you'll definitely see an impact within, say, movies once you go and you overextend or you represent that model incorrectly. You've already seen it with Star Wars. What's going to happen when, say, Marvel Studios hits that same wall? So anyway, here's their numbers. Now, when you're looking at these numbers, remember revenue minus equals. That's pretty much how they'll look at that. When you go in and you compare those numbers year to year, if it's in brackets, that's pretty much telling you that that was a decrease or a loss, depending on what you're looking at. So you're looking at a 6% decline from year-over-year comparisons. Now, they note that the Disney fiscal year ending September 29, 2018, included the release of Star Wars Battlefront 2 video game and Star Wars Last Jedi and Solo. So mentioning here, they say, I think that this is interesting too. Worth mentioning is Disney's 2018 fiscal year saw more Star Wars releases than 2017, but right there, you still see a numbers drop. So that's saying, you saw an issue that people have been talking about, and really that's the reason that you're seeing the movie slow down, because there's a fear of what's transpiring within the market. Now, of course, they discuss this, and a lot of stuff, when you look at stock reports, there's always going to be a finger that's pointed a little bit, but again, it's going to be pointed at specific products rather than practice. It's not ever going to discuss anything that gets into it. You're going to hear, again, certain wording that you'll recognize over and over. The decrease in licensing, publishing, and game revenue was primarily due to the lower revenue from sales of licensed merchandise, an unfavorable FX impact, and a decrease in licensee settlements. Lower revenue from sales of merchandise includes decreases from products based on Frozen, Cars, and Princess versus an increase for Mickey and Minnie and Avengers. The Avengers should be a note too, something that pretty much reflects old school mentality as far as it comes to what comic books are and what sells. And yet, of course, these folks out there, they're always fishing for new markets. So regarding Star Wars, they report the decrease in retail revenue was due to lower comparable store sales, partially offset by an increase in online retail revenue. Lower comparable retail store sales reflect decreased sales of Star Wars and on. So you can see exactly how they see the decrease. So they see a decrease in sales for Star Wars, partially offset by, which is always the way that this formula reads. Again, 2018 Disney fiscal year saw 3 big releases for Star Wars, only while the previous year only had Rogue One, yet the numbers are lower. Now that should actually scare a company, and I think that it actually did. Now, Disney's fiscal year ending September 30th, 2017, and we looked at this quite a bit when it came up on this channel. You can go back and find in detail stock reports where we go out, we look in depth, all the details to that, and you go through item after item with you're trying to see the overall impact and judge exactly where a company's coming from. Because when you're talking about an about face, why exactly do you get certain changes? Like, for example, comic books, do they really matter? Or is it studio? Or is it, the big mainstay player putting butts in beds? When you ask all of those questions, what is your primary source and how much is made from each one? It's actually very enlightening. But anyhow, looking at the 2017 numbers, you can see, again, revenue down, operating income. You see the differences there. Now, the releases for 2017 Disney fiscal year included Rogue One, Star Wars Story. The releases of 2016 fiscal year included Force Awakens and Star Wars Battlefront. Now, it's interesting looking back at the Force Awakens, seeing why it did well versus, your follow-ups, how they've descended, with revenue, how they've basically driven off a cliff, and why that is. You can argue many points, but the fact remains that after that initial take, you just keep rolling down that hill. Now, Disney, they go and they talk about exactly where those decreases are. They say that the decrease in licensing, publishing, game revenue was due to a decrease of 8% for their games business, 6% for merchandising license business, 2% for the publishing business. Lower game revenue was due to the discontinuation of Infinity fiscal year 2016 and decreased licensing revenue from Star Wars Battlefront. Then they talk about the merchandising and on falling off. And when they're talking about the fall off with merchandising, basically what they're doing is they're blaming movies that follow The Force Awakens for not holding up. And when you say that, when you talk about that, whose fault is that? I mean, really, whose fault is that? So they talk about, again, offset and on the decrease in retail and other revenue was due to a decrease 9% from our retail business driven by lower comparable store and online sales in our key markets, reflecting higher sales, Frozen, Star Wars merchandise, fiscal year 2016, partially offset by in 2017. Like I say, I think that this is kind of interesting, and it really doesn't delve into the impact of marketing and on. If you're talking about the repercussion of this, again, LCSs or local comic shops, you saw that impact. But what about toy stores? Yeah, you saw that too. You saw exactly what this kind of thing can lead to, and it leads to utter calamity, which pretty much is going to hit you in the pocket even harder when you destroy the way that you go out and you give items. Then they talk about the course corrections, which, essentially they're talking about the slowdown in movies, only one title being to-date release, the Disney concentrating on their Disney Plus streaming Star Wars TV series, certain people that they're bringing on board, and so on. I mean, they discuss those moves. As far as Marvel Comics, they talk about Axel Alonso was let go, with C.B. Cebulski being named. C.B. Cebulski returning original characters that had been replaced. Cebulski also seems to be getting rid of Alonso's politically correct usage and replacement of characters, which actually I don't think is true. I think that if you look beyond that, I actually think what happened was that somebody had to pay. And Alonso, I think he was released not because of lower sales, but he was actually released because of bad headlines. That's my own theory on that. If you go out and you look at how Marvel is doing these days, they have brought back many of these series that Alonso had out there as well. Look at Iceman. It returns. It performs woefully, but yet it's still brought back. When you ask why these things are brought back or why people are allowed to go out and represent products unprofessionally, well, I think that as long as you're pointing at the right crowd in this day and age, yeah, I think that that's okay, because right now they figure their bigger markets, stuff like movies, that actually helps them. So comic books, they're kind of one of those afterthoughts. Marvel TV, Marvel gaming and on, all of that's mentioned in here. And of course, I think this is a good article. But, when you're looking at it, I think you're playing a bigger game here. I think that you do see a lot more products that you're seeing that name invested or divested into. And when you ask questions about it, you have to ask questions about the bigger game. No matter what you think about these types of reactions, though, what you can't argue with is the fact that bad operating ideas, bad practice, it actually has consequence. And those consequences over time, they destroy. I've talked about the impact on Star Wars comics. Of course, many people have talked about movies and other things as well. I talked a lot about comic books and on, and you can see what happens. But you tell me what you think about this kind of stuff. Also, if you like this kind of content, please consider supporting the channel. Like, sub, hit that bell for notifications, because I try to bring you new content daily. Also, there will be live streams that will be coming up soon. Make sure that you check those out, because of course that'll be a lot of fun there. They're very interactive, that's what I like running. So of course, come and check that out. But leave me comments. I want to see what you think on this stuff. And as always, I appreciate you for showing up. I definitely do. Thank you.